Olá! Durante a Gen Con, eu tive a oportunidade de entrevistar o Jim Cartwright, o chefão cabeça da Fantasy Flight Games. Tecnicamente, o cargo dele é cabeça de estúdio da Fantasy Flight Games. Ele é o cara que decide e desdecide a respeito de Star Wars Unlimited. Ele trabalhou no design original do jogo, mas ele não é o designer do jogo. O designer do jogo é o Danny Schaefer. E o Jim diz com todas as letras: eu trabalhei durante o design, durante a etapa de testes de Spark of Rebellion, mas assim que o jogo ficou pronto e a gente mandou ele pra impressora, eu larguei mão do design. Não encosto mais, não tem mais nada a ver com isso. Então, decisões de banimento... Inclusive, eu já falo disso na entrevista, mas eu quero deixar isso amplamente claro pra galera que tá assistindo aqui, que decisões de banimento ou de que carta é lançada ou quando é lançada, isso não passa por ele. O Jim Cartwright é um executivo. As decisões que ele toma têm a ver com o planejamento da empresa, como que a empresa atua, mercado que ela atua, mercado que ela entra, mercado que ela sai. Tem a ver com a quantidade, por exemplo, a quantidade de carta em booster, qual é a chance de vir qual carta em booster. Quando eu soube que eu ia ter essa entrevista, isso foi muito engraçado, porque eu queria entrevistar alguém do Star Wars Unlimited quando eu fui pra Gen Con, e não tava dando. Lá na Gen Con, eles fizeram tinha uma brincadeira de você desafiar os designers dos jogos, que se você conseguia ganhar, você ganhava um brinde. E aí o grosso dos designers estavam jogando Star Wars Unlimited com a galera e tinha fila o tempo inteiro. Não dava pra parar pra falar com eles. O Jim Cartwright, o cara é chefão. Ele não tá na Gen Con passeando. Ele também tinha reunião, trabalho o dia inteiro. E aí eu soube que eu ia conseguir falar com ele, assim, na véspera. Falou, era, sei lá, 4 horas da tarde, e falaram: Elba, amanhã você vai ter meia hora pra conversar com o Jim Cartwright. Faz o teu. E aí eu fui atrás de conversar com a galera, entender, fui nos grupos de WhatsApp de Star Wars Unlimited aqui do Brasil, ver com a galera, entender o que o pessoal queria saber a respeito. E isso balizou as perguntas que eu fiz. Tem um monte de pergunta que eu não fiz nessa entrevista, contudo, não por ficar com medo da resposta ou achar que vai chatear o cara ou qualquer coisa assim, mas o Jim Cartwright, ele deu uma entrevista no Garbage Rollers 1 ano atrás sobre como foi o começo do Star Wars Unlimited. Inclusive, ele mesmo fala nessa entrevista sobre como foi convencer a Asmodee a permitir que a Fantasy Flight lançasse um TCG depois do fracasso do Star Wars Destiny e de tantos outros card games que a Fantasy Flight fez aí no passado. A própria Asmodee tava meio tipo: sério, você quer lançar um TCG? Você acha que a gente vai liberar vocês lançar um TCG? Tá bom, eu não quero, você vai ter que me convencer. E justamente por ele ter dado essa entrevista 1 ano atrás, eu falei: mano, ao invés de gastar meu pouco tempo perguntando sobre isso, eu vou apontar pra galera, vou colocar o link dessa entrevista com o Garbage Rollers, é uma entrevista em texto, tá aqui na descrição, e pra quem não fala inglês, vou dar a versão super resumida da história, é que a Fantasy Flight tem... Isso é o que eu vejo muita gente que fala que tem medo do Star Wars Unlimited acabar do nada, porque a Fantasy Flight tem um histórico de acabar com card game. O Jim tem plena ciência disso. Ele sabe que isso é uma fama que a empresa tem, ele não tem vergonha disso, e ele sabe que ele tá lutando contra a maré pra mudar essa percepção. E aí ele explica como é a diferença de um TCG, não é um LCG. Eles estão... O resumo da coisa, os resultados falam por si só. Star Wars Unlimited botou 10 mil pessoas no evento, no Galactic Championship. 2 mil competidores, 8 mil visitantes, e no fim de semana seguinte ainda tinha centenas de pessoas, e eu digo centenas porque eu não realmente calculei, eu só vi centenas de pessoas jogando na Gen Con. Então assim, claramente o jogo... Claramente ao longo desse ano e meio que o jogo existe, a Asmodee já foi convencida de que o negócio tá dando certo, o público em geral foi convencido de que o negócio tá dando certo, e eu acho excepcionalmente improvável que Star Wars Unlimited vá acabar de repente. Já passou essa fase da vida do jogo, que o jogo se preocuparia com isso. Então, sem mais delongas, eu não tenho muito mais o que falar a respeito, além de deixar a própria entrevista falar por si. Vamos rodar a vinheta e ver o que o Jim Cartwright acha e pensa a respeito do Star Wars Unlimited. Esse vídeo é um oferecimento da Galápagos, afinal de contas, sem eles eu não teria sequer ido para a Gen Con. Então, muito obrigado, Galápagos, por ter possibilitado essa entrevista. Não só não teria ido para a Gen Con, como, sejamos sinceros, não fui eu que consegui marcar a agenda com o Jim Cartwright. Então, muito obrigado, pessoal da Galápagos, por ter possibilitado toda essa cobertura da Gen Con, toda a cobertura de Star Wars Unlimited e essa entrevista com o Jim Cartwright. Vamos rodar a vinheta e falar com ele. So, Jim, thanks for accepting this interview.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah. I'm not going to waste your time with questions you have answered in recent interviews.
Sure.
So, I want to get right into the meaty.
Yes, let's dive in.
So, you used to play more LCGs than TCGs, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I came into my competitive scene really with the Star Wars LCG.
Okay.
From Fantasy Flight, of course. And so that was right when the game launched. I took a lot of my time and spent a lot of energy actually doing the Star Wars LCG competitive scene. I actually, small little fact is I went to the very first regional that Fantasy Flight had at their game center at the time, and played and ended up winning that event. And so they did a little piece on that and when that happened. And I went to that first year's Worlds. Top 16, but I was hoping for more, but 16 I was pretty proud of.
16 is pretty good, yeah. And how was the shift? Well, it's two shifts actually, right? Because it's from player to manager at the very least,
sure,
and from LCG to TCG. How did that change? How was it any difference? Do you take it how do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. So I do have, prior to Star Wars LCG, I had some in my background of just for fun. I grew up playing the original Star Wars CCG, and so I have some background in that kind of ecosystem and kind of the differences between that. And when we, as a player, I think one of the things that became really evident is, most TCG sets, especially with Star Wars Unlimited, we have 250 plus cards 3 times a year. 750 cards is a lot of cards for someone to keep in their head. And the reason I bring that up is because my approach to specifically the Star Wars LCG was I was very, very keen to understand every card. And if you know anything about the way that game worked, if you showed me a card because of the pod system, I knew what pods you had in your deck. And so with the 3 bases out front, and then all of your, the cards that you're bringing out initially, I used to drill how to memorize every single card. I knew what your deck mostly was within the first turn or two, and that helped me kind of frame my competitive sequence, understand what I needed to do to counter. For TCGs, I don't have the ability to memorize 750 cards a year and add that to everything. So it creates a different experience of trying to understand kind of the vibes of it. Of course, you recognize some of the more common strategies. You kind of look for patterns that you're going to be able to interact with. But it is a very different, for me specifically, a very different approach. Because again, I used to have my brother and I on the way to tournaments would literally be like, okay, it's pod 27. What are the 5, give me the cards that are in pod 27, and I'd have to name them from left to right in the binder. So I can't do that with Star Wars Unlimited at a CCG.
That brings me to you discussing how you used to memorize the cards and how there's too many of them now. This makes me remember something. Most people, at least in Brazil, they will know you as if I ask anyone who is Jim Cartwright in Star Wars Unlimited play in Brazil, who is Jim Cartwright? Oh, he's the big boss in Fantasy Flight. Could you get in a little more detail on what is and isn't under your watchful eye? For example, the quickest question I would say, how much of a banning discussion goes through you,
Sure.
if at all, or how much of a card design goes through you?
Yes, that's a great question. So I want to kind of set up a little bit of a framework to start. Is for Star Wars Unlimited's initial system design, the core design of the way that the mechanics and the way the game plays out. I was a designer with Danny Schaefer.
Yes.
We kind of built that initial system together. Once that system, once the R&D phase, if you will, was done, and we actually moved into we're going to start doing set design, we're going to start actually putting this on the project and building the sets together. That was when I kind of disconnected from the team in my new role, which at the time was the VP or the director of strategy at that point. Once I stepped into that, from a card design perspective, I was no longer involved. So Danny leads the team as he did in R&D as well. But he and the rest of the designers are the ones that, when you talk about something like banning, in my current role now, and even in my role shortly after the design was done, I have no say in that process. I fully trust the design team to be able to think through those decisions. They talk with the organized play team as well, and they kind of collaborate on where they're looking at data, they're paying attention to any kind of major events, of course, and they're drawing that information in, and so I am fully away from that. I trust them to do both the design and I trust them to do those kind of more on the ground, like what needs to happen from a banning or from a suspension list. They figure that out.
Cool. Well, same thing for card design as you mentioned. And yes. I'm repeating myself to be very clear to people watching at home.
Of course.
So he does not he doesn't make the cards, he doesn't write the cards, he does not choose what the cards do.
I do not.
Perfect. And this leads very nicely because I know this isn't a binding answer.
Yeah.
I want to know your personal opinion on bannings. Two things actually, bannings and reprints. How do you personally think they affect the game as a whole, the secondary market? Sorry, I forgot the term for a second.
Sure, yeah.
The secondary market, the influx of players, people leaving. Do you have any thoughts on how bannings and reprints work towards the game?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a conversation that Danny and I have had from the very early days of R&D for Star Wars Unlimited. Those kinds of reactions to particularly powerful cards, things that have a deep influence into the way the game works. That the developers are very keen to know that that's a tool that they have to use in their toolbox to make the game still competitive and fun and interesting. And they do so knowing that it is going to affect the perception of what happens to those cards, both in the secondary market and in the place itself. But they want to make sure that at the end of the day, what's most important, and is always the most important thing, is that they're creating a game that is fun to play and something that they can be, they can make sure that there's not some kind of abuse happening where it's no fun to just play. And I think we saw that with the very first suspension with the Boba Fett leader, and realizing that very quickly we watched in that first, we call it kind of, it's not season in the way that we talk about the OP season, but set 2 had their organized play structure of the planetary qualifiers. And when we got we try to do a thing where at the end of each of those, before a new set launches and we go into the new PQ season, we take a moment to analyze, review. Of course, we're doing it, across that whole series of events. But then we very intentionally have a window to say, is there anything here we see that is affecting it so greatly that we need to make adjustments? That we have to make those decisions, as hard as they may be, to make sure that it's an interesting and more balanced experience for players competing. And so we take those moments to do that intentionally at the end of every PQ, grouping, or at the end of a regional sector as we get into season 1, that has that moment to analyze it. But to answer the question directly, I think it's the only way to keep a competitive game healthy, and to not think through that puts a really, really strong limitation on how the players can interact, because you're essentially thinking about things in terms of perfect balance, which doesn't exist, not realistically. So again, we'll go back to the 750 cards a year.
Yeah.
And so it's a tool they can use to make sure that we keep the experience fun and healthy.
Okay. And again, not a binding answer. This is not a promise.
Yeah.
I would like to hear your opinion on reprints because, we're going to have a rotation next year, and Cunning and Vader and Luke Skywalker and all these powerful cards are going away, and people are thinking, maybe they'll reprint, or maybe the game will be completely different. Well, reprints, they can keep the value of the cards, keep people playing, make people not feel like they need to reinvest in their decks, but at the same time, if you reprint too much, people might not want to chase those chase cards anymore.
Sure. I mean, so one of the things I think that we've already established in the way that we've approached every set past Spark of Rebellion is the dev team is very aware of how to balance and incorporate reprints into the system, right? Like it already exists we have reprints in every set
we do.
along the way, right? And so the reason those things exist, or the reasons they're putting them in the sets, is because they are thinking about in the way that they're building their balanced meta, and the way that they're thinking about the card pool of what's available. They are baking that into the process so that if they feel there's a gap that needs to be filled, they again have a tool in their arsenal. So I think it is I think again, the ability to do reprints is a smart tool that developers can use, and in fairness, a necessity in the way that we do it. Now, obviously, we don't want to create sets that are, 60% of the sets are reprint. That's not what we're trying to accomplish, right? But we want to create an experience that gives the developers tools to be able to say, you know what, a world without a specific card, might not be a healthy experience. We would, at that point, the devs would likely be, we're going to reprint this card to make that work. And of course, most importantly, is keeping in mind that with the idea of rotation also comes the idea of an eternal format in which players can continue to play with all the cards they want, and be able to still engage with the game that way. And then maybe even more important than that, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that players just have fun with the game, right? Yeah. There's a reason why in our connect, collect, compete, connect is the first. It's intentional. We just want people to play. And so we're not going to ever come to anyone's table and say, you can't play with that. You play whatever way you want, whatever way makes you happy.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Now, my last question.
Okay. I'm ready.
Could you please explain to the camera exactly why Admiral Thrawn, Patient and Insightful, is the best deck in the entire game?
I mean, the answer truly is very simple. Because Grand Admiral Thrawn is one of the greatest, if not the greatest character in Star Wars that I personally love, and for no reason other than that should be reason enough. But I understand that you are a big Thrawn fan as well.
I am too. We are, I believe, great minds think alike, yes?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, if that isn't obvious from that experience, I don't want to go into having to explain all of that, but I'm sure you can explain it, and I trust your ability to explain why that's the best deck. But for me, it does come down to, because any interviews most people do with me about like specific decks or cards, for me, it really does come down to vibes. It comes down to my favorite characters. It comes down to the way that the themes of the deck happen. And I am, and have always been, a huge, huge Thrawn fan. So I'm glad you made the right choice.
Jim, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bom, esse foi o Jim. Vocês sabiam que eu não podia deixar de fazer uma brincadeirinha no fim da entrevista. Se você gostou desse vídeo, deixe o seu joinha. Se você não gostou desse vídeo, deixe o seu desjoinha. Dúvidas, opiniões, comentários, perguntas. Inclusive, no processo de fazer essa entrevista, eu li um tanto a respeito da vida e da história do Jim Cartwright. Além da entrevista com o Garbage Rollers, que está na descrição desse vídeo. Se você tiver alguma dúvida a respeito de mas por que fez coisa desse jeito e não fez desse outro jeito, bota aí. Às vezes eu consigo responder. E não se esqueça, Se você quiser conhecer os grupos oficiais de Star Wars Unlimited, eu também vou colocar o link deles na descrição do canal. Também já boto aí o Store Locator, Event Locator, pro caso de você querer entrar nesse jogo que tá crescendo a passos galopantes. Espero ter se divertido e até a próxima. Tchau, tchau!